quality is so intimately tied to outcomes of interest, especially in hospitals or healthcare systems. And this is basically the US. They are hands down the leader here. And especially when it comes to reimbursement, really making people conscious in not only measuring it, but ensuring that they are thinking from the perspective of how do we improve this? How do we measure it, first of all? So that's the one piece. But then how do we actually help patients attain it? Because if you don't, that satisfaction piece that sort of is tied to payments, they're not going to achieve it, and they don't get their full payment. So it's a completely different model. And I know Canada hasn't really embraced quality as part of the reimbursement strategy yet, but that seems like such a natural fit in other markets.
I think so too. And imagine in the Canadian landscape having part of the assessment on whether or not something should be reimbursed was not just the clinician perspective or the government perspective, but the patient's perspective over whether they actually saw any value of taking that treatment or adhering to that regimen or performing that behavioral intervention or whatever it was, right? So that's what I do like about the NCQA taking that approach in the US. It's keeping everybody accountable because it's a joint discussion between the clinician and the patient at the outset about what it is they're trying to achieve together. So there's no coming back after where the patient says, but I didn't get what I wanted. And the clinician says, yes, you did. You got this. Because that's typical healthcare, right? You go through the whole thing, you take the pill, and the clinician says, hey, yeah, look, I can see by this metric, you're great. And the patient says, what are you talking about? I still feel terrible. I can't do the thing I wanted to do at all. And so this way, if they agree on what it is important, and they can see whether or not that thing has been achieved. So there's also, I think, less confusion around it, and there's no um, defaulting to one person's point of view, because you also can't just default to the patient's point of view with goal attainment scaling. It's not just ask the patient and you're done. The way we do it, which is not the way necessarily everybody does it, is you have to have a nuanced discussion that's facilitated by the clinician. So in the same way, I may go into a trial and say, well, my goal is to run a kilometer, and it would be too easy. And I might go into a different trial and say my goal is to run this marathon. It might be too difficult. So the clinician has to sort of moderate that, and they know what's achievable by me. They theoretically know what's achievable with the intervention. So you don't have any of that worry that some people have when they hear about personalized endpoints, that the goals will be too hard or the goals will be too easy, um, which is some concern that people have. But the clinician has to be a part of that conversation.